Hello, and welcome to Badger Talks Live, which brings exciting happenings, resources, and talent from your UW flagship campus to the people of Wisconsin and beyond. I'm Jonathan Tunstall from Los Angeles, California. I'm a third year PhD student in the Department of Curriculum and Instruction at UW Madison School of Education. I am pleased to introduce Yorel Lashley, who is the Director of Arts in the Office of Professional Learning and Community Education. Today, Yorel will be talking about the UW Arts Collaboratory and how this arts making engine provides opportunities for youth to cultivate wellness and advocate for social change through its unique and creative programs. Yorel is a developmental psychologist interested in self efficacy and social emotional learning in arts, academic, and integrated environments. He is also a professional musician, founder and director of Drum Power, an arts collaboratory drum and dance experience for young people. And he has served on the Madison Arts Commission. His work at Place leverages University of Wisconsin-Madison's arts expertise and rich history from all 10 departments in the School of Education to enrich broader communities. Please welcome Yorel Lashley.
Thanks so much, Jonathan, for the lovely introduction, and thanks to all for having us and me here today. So the UW Arts Collaboratory, as you can see in this first slide, is really about using various art mediums to support young people, to support the broader community, to leverage what UW-Madison has in the way of arts and thoughts about how to develop and support whole children um, in the broader community. And so we focus on using dance, drumming, theater, and the visual arts to develop and empower young people. So the collab has a very deep history, and we call the UW Community Art Collaboratory the collab, right? That's what we call it for sure. So that's our nickname. Um, in 2017, Erica Halverson, who's in curriculum and instruction, and a very an amazing professor there, and also a staunch educator, and probably the most um, powerful arts advocate, certainly from research side that I know, um, is currently chair of CNI. But she and Kate Corby, who's in the dance department, and then along with Mariah Lefebvre, who was also in dance, and Faisal Abdullah from the art department, um, joined together to sort of think about how we could use UW resources to sort of work together to further the arts, but to specifically think about youth in the broader community and how to actually think about having outward facing programs, but also research. And so I was invited to join that group a bit later, um, to sort of round out the offerings and offer music. And well, you'll hear more about what the details of that are a little bit later. But that outfit is also managed and operated by Stephanie Richards, who keeps us all um, working together and moving smoothly. And actually, her art is circus. So a large. It's important to note, I guess, that the collab sort of lives out the reality of the world around us. That there are lots of folks who have artistic inclinations, but also are connected to the university. And we tried to figure out a way to sort of bring all those things together and leverage those resources. Um, so the collab does its work based out of the Office of Professional Learning and Community Education in the School of Education. And that office leverages School of Education faculty expertise to support non-degree learners and folks from the larger community. So you can see how it makes sense that what sort of naturally coalesced as faculty, a few faculty folks wanting to come together and figure out ways to just work smarter rather than harder, both in terms of raising funds, but also thinking about research. But it also comes to reason that there be an office that also just supports that at a broader level. And that's what the Office of Professional Learning and Community Education does, or PLACE as we call it. So altogether, we are programs, we are research, we are communities of practice, and now given COVID, we're also virtual learning opportunities. So here's some lovely images of sort of what some of these programs look like. And generally, through the collab, we provide art making opportunities for youth to cultivate wellness and advocate for social change. And our vision very much is that Wisconsin youth will see themselves as learners through art making. We believe in the power of arts to engage youth in learning as agents of creativity, intellect, and self efficacy. And we also believe that engaged students empower teachers, and art making can improve well being and change communities. And that, in fact, art experiences really do develop and are necessary for whole people. So, logistically and literally, we are 4 programs: Whoopensocker, which has a very funny name, and one is very fun to say, Performing Ourselves, Fauhaus, and Drum Power. And so the images you see right now, on the left, you see Whoopensocker, some images, and on the right, you see images from Filehouse. Whoopensocker focuses on creativity, expression, and writing. It's usually a 6-week school residency focused on creativity, expression, writing, and collaboration. Students write short stories and plays, and Whoopensocker teaching artists actually use a combination of performing and creative arts exercises and drama and also theater to bring the ideas of the young people to life. And in fact, in so doing, to build the next generation of classroom experiences and focus on facilitating sort of self-empowerment for all students. The pieces are then performed at the schools that the students attend by professional casts with fidelity to the scripts and the spirits of the students themselves. So, in their own words, and they're usually quite hilarious, but always powerful. And so, this short video will give you a closer look at ways Whoopensocker works and the energy of the program. So, let's watch the video now.
It's the Whoopensocker Lessons featuring your great ideas!
Have you been looking for ways to engage your students in creative writing? We know it's hard to reach students through digital learning, but we're here to help. Whoopensocker is a University of Wisconsin program that uses theater techniques and performance to teach creative writing to elementary school students. And now we have digital learning tools for you. I believe I can have a best friend.
I believe everyone should have a tarantula.
Me too. No one knows.
We're going to go back to the mayor of Whoopensocker City to hear how the mayor is going to tune in and weigh in on this issue. Mayor!
I used to think tacos were only for Tuesdays, but now I see that tacos can be for any day.
In Whoopensocker, every idea is a good idea. See you next time.
Whoop it up!
Sock it to me.
Because extraordinary is you. The end.
So the lovely lady that you saw with the very fake mustache was Erica Halverson, and she's the mayor of Whoopensocker. But so you get an idea of sort of the range of activities, but also the impact of sort of that program and kind of what it looks like. So moving on to Filehouse, which is the other image on the right side of the slide here. Filehouse focuses on bodies, minds, and senses, and the arts, and through the visual arts more specifically. Fauhaus brings together diverse UW students and court-involved Dane County teens to collaboratively develop and create socially engaged art, along with exhibitions under the guidance of one Associate Professor Faisal Abdullah. Although the art making is visual in nature, they eat meals together, they listen and explore music, and really gain a space to explore identity and identity expression in powerful ways. And Faisal is amazing at that. And really, he's a DJ himself and is also a barber. So it brings a wide range of experiences that young people can identify with. So this short video will give you a closer look at the ways Filehouse works and its energy as a program. So let's take a look at that video now.
Are currently at an event called Too Much Sauce, and it is hosted by the Fauhaus Project.
This is a really emotional moment for me, watching this show come into existence. And everything you see and hear is the brain work of these young people here. The neons were designed by them and we had them fabricated. The title was their title, Too Much Sauce.
He's helped us out a lot. He's taught us a lot of new things and opened our mind. I'd just like to thank you all myself for coming out here and seeing all the stuff that we did.
Thank you for coming tonight. Please enjoy.
They say that there isn't a lot of diversity in Madison. There certainly is. It's in this room. And it's true testimony that if you give people what they want, they will come and see it.
So the gentleman you see in the image of Fauhaus on the right of the slide here is Faisal Abdullah. And you saw at the end of the video that there were some logos for the Bubbler and a couple of other organizations. One of the things that the collab does very powerfully is to collaborate with other folks, both on campus and off campus. So some of you may be aware that the Bubbler is an organization that is part of the public library downtown here in Madison. And so a number of Faisal's classes have actually taken place at the Bubbler. And so they're a collaborator. So one of the things you should definitely take away is that there's a spirit to the collaboratory that really, or the Arts Collab, that really is about building on and off campus and having continued partnerships that really get at the work of bringing young people's needs to the fore and doing that in artistically powerful ways and working with any and all folks who are interested in that work. Okay, so in this image, you see some images from Drum Power on the left and then Performing Ourselves on the right. Performing Ourselves empowers youth through dance and creative movement. The program teaches a movement-based curriculum to students in schools and community centers. And a lot of the work for PO, or as we call it, has been in community centers as an explicit focus, because we know that a lot of the young people that are in those programs have less access to the arts and resources more generally. So PO has always made it a focus priority to work in those spaces. They use dance education, dance movement therapy principles, and performance to encourage embodiment, resiliency, and positive self-concept in young people who often have few opportunities to access dance and arts more generally. Since the program is implemented by a team of largely undergraduate dance majors who are trained and supported, it is also a valuable teaching and community experience for UW students as well. And so this short video will give you a closer look at the ways performing ourselves works and the energy of that program. So let's take a look at that video now. So PO was founded by Kate Corby and Mariah Lefebvre and has grown with the leadership of Mary Patterson, a dance movement therapist who has taught as well as supported student teaching artists over the last few years. And as you can see from the video, there's a range of different students, different ages, and they all come together and work together through the auspices of the PO program to design their own choreography. I guess they divine it also, and then present it. And that was actually part of a PO showcase, which is usually an event that happens a few times a year. And that was here at Lathrop Hall at the UW-Madison in the main theater. So moving on to Drum Power. Drum Power builds up, and Drum Power, I should just be clear, is an organization that I founded in New York City in 2001 to teach West African, Afro-Cuban, and Afro-Brazilian percussion or drumming, with the express intention to teach life skills through music and to integrate fully social emotional learning into academic learning. So in this case, the academic learning is actual music skills. You have to learn technique, how to hit the drum, how to hold the drum, how to play the drum vocabulary in terms of the sounds that the drum can make, and then learning a repertoire of various traditional rhythms to sort of be able to use those to practice these skills on a regular basis. And Drum Power generally builds up youth through drumming, but also focus on life skills. And so the life skills of focus are discipline, which we define as using our energy for good things. So community, defined as supporting our own learning and the learning of others. And then leadership, defined as doing the right thing, which students usually know, even when you have to do it by yourself, and especially when no one is watching. So to start to get at really trying to help students develop some internal motivation for doing what they think is right. And then, so a lot of the work we do is discussions around How do we figure out what right is, and how are we critical consumers of both the information that's coming to us and the information we seek out? And if we think about education as a larger just process to seek out information that we want young people to have some power over, then we need to create situations where they can practice using those skills. So Drum Power typically is in after school programs, but also been at community-based sites, starting in Harlem and Manhattan and the Bronx and Queens and Brooklyn, and then moving to Madison in 2010 when I moved here. And to date, Drum Power has reached about 3,800 students. I've calculated have participated in at least a year-long program, and Drum Power is designed to be an ongoing process. So ideally, a semester at a minimum, and ideally a year, and even beyond that, lots of years. And I did have the pleasure of having some students that I got to teach for 6 or 7 years in a row, because when I was in New York, I taught at a K-8 school, so we had that continuous connection. And it was power to see sort of how folks would grow over time and how young people would start to utilize the drumming and take it fully as their own thing and take it to new and exciting places. So this short video gives you a closer look at the ways Drum Power works and the energy of the program, and specifically is presenting what was sort of a novel and new thing. We always have shows once a year, but this was actually a show that I wrote, actually a musical, a play about the journey of one drummer to try to become a master drummer, and the stars of this show are all of the students that were drumming with Drum Power that year in Madison, Wisconsin, and they're all playing different roles and playing different parts and playing different rhythms. So let's take a look at that video now.
Welcome to the 9th Annual Drum Power Student Showcase. We have a really special theatrical performance for you this evening. It's called The Drummer's Path, and it's a story of one young drummer and her journey to become a master drummer. The drum spirit sees that she is called by the drum and tells her that if she really wants to learn, she must travel to West Africa. On their travels, the drum spirit tells Nia a story about the most powerful drumming he has ever seen. Imagine the sight and sound of 25 drummers all playing together.
So in starting Drum Power, I was looking to find ways to engage young people in learning as a path to greater agency in their lives, to be healthy in mind, body, and spirit. But I was also interested in research, and that's sort of what led to the PhD work, to try to figure out what is it that young people take away. I had a lot of anecdotal evidence over the last 15 or so years prior to the PhD of folks saying, from parents, from students, of sort of very powerful experiences that young people had. But I was curious at sort of the cognitive developmental level, what students gain from this program, but also what students gain from programs like it, and had some interest in sort of trying to contribute to the research, ultimately to try to achieve having more young people have the opportunity to have programs and experiences like this. And so that's very in keeping with one of the focuses of the UW Arts Collab. And you can see in this slide. So our directors really came together around program sharing, resources, and thinking that we needed to sort of work together and thinking about how to incorporate the arts, especially in thinking about what we consider embodied practices, right? Things that you train yourself to do over time through actually doing things, and then the body sort of engages them at a deeper level. Clearly, dance is one of those things. Clearly, music is one of those things. Visual art is also one of those things. And so we can think about that definition as I always describe this as envision yourself when you're in middle school, you go to school for the first time, and the first time you have a combination lock, or you have a locker, right? And they give you a combination lock. And for about the first 2 weeks, you have to look up the numbers and you have to very meticulously turn the lock certain number to the right, then a couple of times around to the left, and another time to the right, and you open the lock. And then after about 2 weeks, your body kind of just takes over doing it. You don't have to think about it hardly at all. That's sort of how we can think about embodied learning and embodied skills. It's the degree to which things sort of just become part of you. And that is some of the powerful spiritual essence of what the arts do, and in particular, what embodied practices do. So we're interested in thinking about that as a research topic, but also social emotional learning. And some of you may know that CASEL, or the Collaborative for Social Emotional Learning, Collaborative Association, they've done a lot of defining sort of what these ideas are and helping the broader field think about them. But so we focused on thinking about how these 4 programs can think about what we do as social emotional learning. And so social emotional learning really is life skills. We think of them, and we need life skills, we know, for lots of things, but we also need life skills for academic learning, right? If you can't sit and focus and read a book, then you can't learn the knowledge that's contained within the book. If you can't focus and study and work through a math problem, then you can't unlock the secrets that math can help you solve. So social emotional learning is super important and requisite for academic learning, not an addition to it. Self-efficacy, the idea of thinking about our beliefs and our own ability to do things and get things done, or agency, is super important. And it's important because self-efficacy has been one of those ideas of constructs that has been measured pretty well for a long time, since it was conceived by Albert Bandura in the 70s. And then finally, I think you could think about our focus on research and interest on research is really about trying to have data reveal more than it conceals, right? We get fed a lot of data now. This is certainly one of the inspirations for me going to graduate school, and specifically going for educational psychology, was because I wanted to become a more critical consumer of data, and also be able to propose my own hypotheses and have the tools to then analyze data and create tests to test those ideas. And hopefully to also be able to provide some support to other teachers and teaching artists who are interested in asking their own questions about these things, about their own programs and their own things they teach, so that not everybody would have to go to graduate school to get these skills. So another good way to think about the collab is also to think about us as a place to bring together ideas about research and compare them, right? We were trying to become more efficient in sort of how we thought about data, but how we went about doing this work together. So this chart just shows you some of the things that we think young people get from being in these programs, and then how we sort of compared them across the different programs. So, for example, in this first column, and we're comparing, in this case, also including some folks in Chicago from the Chicago Consortium on School Research, who had also done some similar work around thinking about what the young people learn, especially focused on social and emotional learning. And so they have in this column self-management, and then the idea of discipline. By the way, discipline for drum power, obviously, as I said before, is using your energy for good things, is a very conscious reclamation of that idea, right? Because a lot of times you ask young people what discipline means, they say when they get in trouble or worse. So in any event, we started to look at sort of what were the different ways of talking about similar ideas that we were using, even just among our 4 programs. So discipline was one way I thought of thinking about goal setting and using your energy, and self-management, you would say, or self-regulation, some would also call it, and but also ideas of having the confidence to keep working at something. Confidence is something that Performing Ourselves talks about a lot. The ability to sort of persevere and cope through difficult times. Coping is an element also for Performing Ourselves. And I think also for Whoopensocker. And then if we move to the next idea, sort of collaboration and community and connection are all different ways that the three different programs in this case, not Filehouse specifically, although community is super important in Filehouse too. But in terms of language, we figured out that we were all kind of talking about similar ideas, but with different language. And then the idea of resiliency or empowerment or leadership, sort of the deeper work that we have to do individually to sort of define where we want to go and the ways that we're supporting young people and having an opportunity to do that for themselves with sort of these sorts of concepts. So this is just to share in brief some of the ideas so you can see sort of at the sort of mechanistic level how the collab goes about thinking about research and doing that work together. And then finally, the collab also supports the field through cultivating and supporting communities of practice through collaborations and even through events. So in this case, I'm sharing about the Wisconsin Arts Integration Symposium, which is this year going to be a virtual event. In years past, it was an in-person event, but it is essentially a magical conference where we bring together educators from communities, from schools, administrators from communities and schools, all to sort of create a space of shared practice and professional development. So each year we have different themes. The themes for this year are social emotional learning, culturally relevant anti-racist art strategies, virtual and or safer in-person arts teaching. So we know that these are obviously things that a lot of folks are thinking about right now. And we think it's important that we take an arts integrated approach to trying to provide these things in sort of the real context in which they exist. This will happen February 13th and 17th, and you can get more information on that here. But I just wanted to sort of share an idea of sort of what the research then yields in terms of communities of practice and sharing through the Arts Collab. So that's the basic overview of what the Collab does over a range of different areas and through all 4 of the specific youth-directed programs. And now we'll take some time to sort of take some questions from you and have some Q&A to just discuss. And hopefully you guys will have some interesting and eye-opening questions for me to sort of think about and learn something from the questions that you actually asked as well.
Yorel, thanks so much for presenting today. And hello, everyone. I'm Fran Paleo-Moyer, Badger Talks producer. Another really interesting topic for today. And thank you so much for sharing the powerful work that's being done at the Collab. I know that we've had a lot of people buzzing in and out of the presentation today. And I see a comment here. Susan Burke-Custer says she's a UW Dance Department graduate. She'd love to get involved. She says she's had many years of experience working with children and various collaborators. Let's communicate. That leads to a bigger question. So we see the save the date coming up for this arts integration symposium. Are there other ways that people can get involved, Yorel?
Wow. Well, yes. So obviously there's one way is the easiest way to just sort of get an idea, sort of the breadth of opportunity would be to visit the CoLab website. But I think, each of the programs, for example, utilizes sometimes students in different ways. For example, we have a research team of graduate students that is just a CoLab focused research team that work on analyzing different pieces of data. Sometimes we're presenting at different conferences, like we were at AERA a few years ago in Toronto when it was still able to be in person. And we'll present there again, upcoming virtually. So there are also opportunities to actually, if you're a teaching artist, to actually get involved in a very hands-on way with some of the programs. Like we do use, for example, dance students actually get to teach through performing ourselves and receive training to do so. The same is true for Whoopensocker. I know Faisal Abdullah we've been talking in terms of visual arts about trying to find graduate Masters of Fine Arts students to actually support that program. And then obviously there's always the folks can give funds and donations because we're all operating in a not-for-profit capacity to sort of room these programs out to students. So those are definitely some ways.
Yeah, thanks. That's fabulous. And folks, feel free to post questions in the chat if you have additional questions for Yorel. And I have a question for you. I know it's kind of the chicken or the egg question, Yorel. Wondering, were you a musician first as a percussionist and then got interested in education, or was it the other way around? You were looking for a vehicle to be able to teach?
Well, the funny thing is, that's actually a more complicated question to ask me than it probably is for most people, because I started music very young. My father is a professional musician from Chicago, actually a charter member of a group called the AACM, the Association for the Advancement of Creative Musicians, which is the group that the Chicago Art Ensemble comes out of. So I grew up around a lot of jazz musicians. And I was playing trumpet and singing in the Chicago Children's Choir and so forth. But my parents lived overseas in Liberia, West Africa, before the first military coup, actually. And I was actually there for that, which was quite an experience. But while I was in Liberia, I studied a little bit with a master drummer from Liberia and heard the rich sound of the djembe, and was kind of smitten by it. Took a few lessons, but then got back to the United States and sort of set that aside. I also set soccer aside, went back to football. But eventually, when I was in college, I got a work-study job at the South Madison Neighborhood Center, which is now the Boys and Girls Club of Madison over there. And I was working in the computer lab, and then I was working at the Wilmar Neighborhood Center on the east side as a youth program worker and teen program worker. And I stayed there for years as work study while I was an undergrad, and fell in love with just being with young people, and found I had some ability to reach and teach them, but wasn't seriously playing music. I was actually DJing. I DJ'd all through college and put myself through school, money-wise, spending parties essentially. And but I started to get serious about drumming again the start of graduate school, the first stint of graduate school, which was me getting a master's degree in African American Studies history. And then I went off to New York to become a professional percussionist, and I worked at a not-for-profit out there in the arts, but I wasn't directly working with young people, and I began to miss them from all those work study jobs. So for Drum Power, it really was birthed by me sort of taking a step and working backward and thinking, well, okay, now you're a professional percussionist playing Afro-Cuban, Afro-Brazilian, and West African traditional styles. Is there a way that you can use that work to get back to young people? And so I sort of just worked backward. Well, what does it take to be a musician? If I have to sell this thing to organizations to then hire me to run a program with young people, I needed to be clear on what the outcome would be. And so I just worked backward and because I had a not-for-profit job in the arts, I got a lot of the folks that I knew through that work to sign on and just let me try something with some young people with drums. And it kind of grew from there.
That's a great story, Yorel. Thank you for sharing that with us. And thanks so much for sharing all of the great work that you and your team is doing. And teachers and artists out there, feel free to reach out to Yorel and his team if you'd like to get involved. And thanks so much for joining us today, Yorel. Just tune in next Tuesday, November 17th. We're going to be talking to Simone Munson, who's the Collections Development Director at the Wisconsin Historical Society. And if you tuned in a few weeks ago, we talked a little bit about Alexander Hamilton and Hamilton the musical and the impact that's made on the musical theater world. But Simone's coming in with a different approach. She's going to be talking about William Hamilton, who is the son of Alexander Hamilton, and his connection to Wisconsin. So don't miss out. Please tune in. And as always, if you're interested in seeing the upcoming schedule or signing up for our email list of upcoming talks, go to badgertalks.wisc.edu. All right, take care, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.